All right, let's talk about something called project procurement. I know. The word procurement sounds kind of dry, right? Like something straight out of a corporate manual. But trust me, this is where the real action is. It's less about paperwork and more like a massive, high-stakes shopping trip, where one wrong move can sink the whole project.
So, let's get right to the heart of it, because it's a question we've all probably screamed into a pillow at some point. You're running a big project. You need something, a piece of gear, a specialist, whatever. Why can't you just, go buy it? Why is there this mountain of paperwork and red tape? It feels like it should be way simpler. And here's the answer. This is the big idea. The one thing you should take away from all this. On a major project, how you buy something is just as, if not more, important than what you buy. All that process, all those rules, that's what's protecting the project. It's about managing risk, making sure things are fair, and, actually getting the thing you paid for. It's the strategy behind the shopping.
Okay, to make this all make sense, let's use an example. Let's follow a project manager who's in charge of building a brand new community skate park. She's got the basic construction figured out, but the ramps, those super complex curved concrete ramps, that's specialist work. So she needs to hire an outside company. And this isn't like adding something to your Amazon cart. This is a huge deal.
And that brings us to the official term for all this, project procurement management. Really, all it is the formal, structured way you get stuff, products, services, whatever, from outside your own team. And that word formal is super important. We're talking about legally binding agreements. There are real consequences, maybe even penalties if you mess this up. You absolutely cannot just wing it.
So for our skate park PM, the very first question she has to answer is a big one. Make or buy? I mean, does her team have the specialized skills to build those crazy concrete ramps? Let's be real, probably not. So the answer is a big, flashing neon sign that says, buy. She has to hire an outside expert. And just like that, with that one decision, the whole procurement roller coaster has officially left the station.
All right, decision made. She's buying. So does she just hop on Google and start calling concrete companies? Nope, not even close. The most important work, the stuff that really sets you up for success, happens before you ever talk to a single seller. It's all about the plan. You need a rock-solid, crystal-clear blueprint of exactly what you need. And the heart and soul of that plan is a document called the Procurement Statement of Work, or SOW for short. For the skate park, this is not a one-liner that says, hey, we need some ramps. No way. It's got everything. The exact dimensions, the type of concrete mix, the safety standards, how smooth the surface has to be. Every single detail. And the magic of a good SOW is this. Sellers can look at it and know exactly what's being asked of them, so they can give you a real price and decide if they're even the right fit for the job. Think of that SOW as the first domino to fall. Once it's done, the project team can use it to figure out a realistic cost estimate and set their budget. It's only after they have that super detailed plan and a budget that they send out the official bid documents. See how it's a step-by-step process? It's all about being methodical to make sure everything's fair, clear, and you don't get any nasty surprises later. Okay, now we're getting to what is, honestly, maybe the most critical decision in this whole thing, choosing the right type of contract. And I'm not talking about boring legal jargon. The contract is the rule book for the game, and its main job, to decide who is on the hook if things cost more than expected, you, the buyer, or them, the seller. So, option one is the fixed price contract, and it's pretty much exactly what it sounds like. The project manager and the seller agree on one number, one single price for the whole job. That's it. If her plans for those skate park ramps are totally locked down in that SOW, and she's sure nothing's going to change, this is a fantastic choice. The price is set in stone. And you can see right here where the risk sits. For the buyer, her financial risk is super low. She knows exactly how much this is going to cost her. But for the seller, their risk is sky high. If the price of concrete suddenly jumps, or the job takes way longer than they planned, too bad. They eat that cost. It's all on their shoulders. But like everything in life, there are pros and cons. The upside for the buyer is she knows the final price, and the seller is super motivated to be efficient. But check out the downsides. That seller isn't dumb. They're going to pad their price a bit to cover their risk, so it might actually cost you more. And here's the scary part. If they start losing money on the job, what do you think they might be tempted to do? Maybe cut a few corners on quality. Yikes!
So what's the other option? It's called a cost reimbursable contract.
With this one, the buyer agrees to pay the seller for all of their real, legitimate costs. So materials, labor, all that stuff. And on top of that, she pays them a fee, which is their profit. You'd use this when things are a little fuzzy, like if the skate park ramp design is still a work in progress. And just look at what happens to the risk. Bam! It does a complete 180. Now the seller has almost no financial risk, right? They know their costs are going to get covered. So where did all that risk go? Yep, it landed right on the buyer's lap. The final price tag is a total unknown when you sign on the dotted line. Now, the big advantage here is flexibility. It's not rigid like a fixed price deal. You can get away with a less detailed SOW, and it's easier to make changes as you go. But the trade-off is massive. It means the buyer has to become an auditor. You have to check every single invoice with a fine-toothed comb to make sure the costs are real. It's a ton more hands-on work for the project team. Okay, so the plan's in place, the contract type is picked. Now it's finally time to go find our partner. Time to pick the company that's actually going to build these ramps. And let me be clear, this is not about just picking the cheapest quote. It's a full-on formal evaluation process.
And this does not happen overnight. We're talking about a process that can easily take months. First, the sellers need a good chunk of time to put together their detailed proposals. Then, the buyer's team has to carefully evaluate every single one against a set of criteria they decided on beforehand. There might be presentations, Q&As, and only after all of that do they get into negotiations. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
You know, a lot of people make this mistake. They think once the contract is signed, phew, procurement is done. No, that's not the finish line. That is the starting pistol. Now the real work begins. The project manager now has to actively manage that contract to make sure the project gets exactly what it paid for.
And this right here, this is the golden rule, the absolute #1 thing to remember about managing a contract. If it is not in the contract, it does not exist. The only way to add or change something is through a formal written change order. You can't just casually ask the contractor, hey, can you add a little bench over here? Nope. Every single change, big or small, has to be documented and signed off on.
So this is the daily grind of procurement control. RPM is constantly checking in on the work, reviewing every invoice, processing those formal change requests, and, this is key, keeping detailed records of absolutely everything. It is a very active, very hands-on job. You gotta stay on top of it to make sure the seller holds up their end of the bargain.
All right, fast forward. The ramps are built, they look incredible, the kids are gonna love it, the project's basically done, right? Well, almost. There is one last super important step in procurement, and that is formally closing the contract. You can't just high-five the contractor and call it a day. And I mean it when I say formal process. The PM has to go through a checklist. She has to verify that every single thing promised in the contract has been delivered and is up to standard. If there are any little disagreements or claims, they have to be sorted out. Only after all of that is the final payment released, and she gives the seller official, written notice saying, we're done, the contract is complete. It's about tying up all the loose ends. So what's the big takeaway here? We've walked through the whole journey, right? From planning the buy, to picking the right kind of contract to handle the risk, to managing the deal every single day until it's officially closed out. A successful project, whether it's a skate park or a skyscraper, isn't just about the physical thing you build. It's built on the foundation of a smart, solid, and really well-managed deal. So next time you pass a big construction site or see a company roll out some new software, or even if you see that finished skate park, take a second and think about all the deals that had to happen behind the scenes. Because on the surface, the project might look amazing, but the real question, the one that keeps project managers up at night, is this: was the deal that built it a masterpiece or a huge, costly mistake?